Welcome to Show Me Yours. I am your co-host, Rihanna Werner, along with my dear friend and colleague, Jason Sheffield.
Hey, everyone.
Welcome, welcome. Today we have a special treat for you. Good friend and slightly my therapist is here. Kristen Sharp, Kristen Faith Sharp. She and I go way back, not just in business, but in sanity as well. We have clung on to each other through building both of our businesses and have experienced the roller coaster of emotion. And I have found sanity in crying side by side with her. I hope that I've given you a safe place too. But now we're actually going to get a little transparent and share some of the craziness that we've lived through together.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So Kristen Faith, this woman is an award-winning entrepreneur, public speaker, marketer, and just general badass. Not only is she beautiful on the outside, I mean, look at the woman, but gosh, she's even more beautiful on the inside. And it's because of her loving, giving, generous spirit. I mean, you and your husband, Terry Josiah, moved to Colorado Springs right around pandemic time? Before the pandemic?
Right before the pandemic, at the end of 2017. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what they did is enter the city and just gave and gave and gave and gave, and just loved on our community and have become actually beacons of Colorado Springs. I mean,
Oh my gosh. I swear I didn't pay her to say this. Oh my gosh.
no, because we've lived through it. I've seen it. I mean, heck, you guys wrote our city anthem.
My husband did. Yes.
Yes.
That's a fact.
I know. It's so cool, huh? It's like, I know them. Anyways, so we get to enjoy a little time with Kristen. And I am not just talking her up. You are about to experience her amazingness. And Jason, you are too.
Yes,
You're going to have a chance to really get to know her
Absolutely.
today. Well, we have a little thing as we get started. We really like to get to know our guests in a different angle. And so we ask a couple questions in a couple different ways. So we have one that we've kind of primed and prepped you for. So I'm going to go ahead and ask. We give usually a choice of 3, but I think this one's really applicable to you, especially with your artistic family and especially ingrained into music. If you could choose one song that represents your entrepreneurial journey, what song would that be?
I'm biased. We made an anthem for Boss Babe.
Get out. Did you really?
We did. If you haven't heard it, I'll have to send it to you. So, last year we released it on International Women's Day, and it's called Boss Babe by the Urban Classic. And something that we do at Anthem Music Enterprises is called a lock-in. So we bring together artists who may have never worked together, some of which have never recorded in a professional studio before. And so typically it's, a creative session. They create the beat at the same day, they songwrite the same day, no take homes. And so the guys put together this experience for artists in our community. And so I was like, hey guys, could we do one for International Women's Day for Women's Month? Because at that time we had never created a all women lock-in. And we did. And so it's called Boss Babe. And there are several different artists here locally and some in Denver as well. They came down, recorded at Anthem, and it was a song that I wanted to be an empowering, uplifting song, not about, just getting money, but all facets of being a woman. And so check it out, Boss Babe, Urban Classic. It's streaming on all platforms. It talks about being a leader. It talks about being strong. It talks about what it's like to be a woman. And I feel like that is truly what embodies me. And I was able to get it recorded. So
Sorry, why didn't I know about this?
I hacked the answer, and I didn't even realize that was coming. So,
And I think you're also the only one that's actually written their own theme song for their entrepreneurial journey.
Unless my husband comes on, and then he's going to say, it could be Olympic City for him. Right. We've had the pleasure of creating a lot of great music. I am not a musician. I just get the pleasure of witnessing their creativity in real life form. So yeah, check us out, Anthem Music Enterprises.
Couldn't imagine living in such an incredible household of creativity. I could just
Thanks.
imagine the buzz that's felt like upon entry to in your home. I'd be like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, we have a giant
Inspiring.
mural in our home too that says our actions create constant prosperity, and that was painted during our engagement party. So it was a live mural on our wall while people were enjoying our housewarming and our engagement party all at the same time. It was great.
Oh
yeah.
my gosh.
So lots of creativity
Yeah.
happens in our home.
That's
That's amazing. Oh, I love that. Okay, now we have our random question. I'm going to have you pull a card.
Okay.
All right, we don't know what it's going to be. We're going to take a stab at answering. Have a little fun with this.
What's your personal hell?
Whoa. Okay.
Oh.
That's deep.
Honestly, if we're going to go there, we're going to go there, right? I honestly think it's our conversation that we had before we turned the on button for today's episode. Prior to me wearing this hat and me becoming the woman that I am today, I didn't realize that we were even going to go down this road. So this is where I'm taking us.
None of us did.
Yeah, here we are. Thanks.
Thanks, God.
Thanks.
He was like, I'm just going to push this button a little further.
Prior to even getting married, moving out here, I used to call myself KP. That was my initials. And the girl that I used to be is not the woman that I identify with now. And so I realized over these last couple months and even years that I have a really hard time embracing that old girl, which is interesting because the work that I do is very much embrace who you are, love who you are. Just because your past happened doesn't mean that that defines you. But I sometimes struggle with that. So this is my vulnerability moment. It's hard to embrace the flaws in yourself. It's so easy to say, oh, embrace your flaws. But let's be honest, it's really hard to do that, especially when you are that person that you're talking about. It's easy to tell, hey, don't embrace your flaws, embrace your flaws. It's okay. But when you're looking in the mirror and looking at yourself, oh, that's so ugly. So I would say my personal hell is not accepting the girl who I used to be. And being ashamed of who I used to be. I worked hard to become this person. And I'm very open with sharing my story and going through domestic violence and going through what I have. But that person was a part of that story. And that's just one like shade of me that I just haven't fully embraced. So I would say my personal hell is, hey, love her because she loved you and she wanted to love who you were going to become. And that person helped you become this. So this is me just talking out loud of, hey, she needs work and I'm going to do the work to do it. So this is my personal testimony.
So beautiful. And I'm not going to let you hang out on that cliff alone, because this conversation you were talking about before we started recording here actually spun from me being vulnerable with the group here and sharing my high school life, and sharing a disciplinary letter that was threatening to either suspend or expel me, and stating that I was disrupting the morals, values, and safeties of
And the well-being.
and the well-being of others. And you know, I resonate with that, because I think it's hard to live in the skin of who that young girl was and who this woman is. And looking back, I have a lot of shame attached to who I was and the actions that I did unknowingly, resulting in consequences. But also unknowingly, I didn't know what to do with all of the gloppity gloop on the inside, and so it came out in really bad, explosive ways. And I look back at that and think, gosh, if I could go back and have a talk with that girl, but that girl probably would have punched me in the face and given me a couple black eyes.
But she wanted love. And I think when
did.
we look at the deeper layer to that, both of those girls wanted love, and they didn't know how to receive it or give it.
Oh gosh, yeah. That's so true.
That part. So yeah, like it's, gosh, if I would have sat down with that girl, KP, oh God. Yeah, that'll be a whole nother conversation for a whole nother day. But yeah, it's deep, like embracing who you are and embracing who this person is. Because a lot of times if we look at it, these versions of women are well respected. They work hard. They, work hard for everything that they have. And usually these women don't live in that world. They don't know that world. They've never touched that world or seen that world or walked in those shoes. But we did.
We did.
We
But
did.
if you look at us, you would think that we probably lived the traditional all-American
Very
life.
privileged life, and we had it all.
Furthest from the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here we are.
Mm.
Now changing subjects.
Yeah. All right, Jason, what's your personal hell?
My goodness. Well, I don't. I've been in my own personal life hell. I know those experiences of what I've walked through, and I think in a lot of ways how we create a hell for ourselves when we're not being able to receive that love and what that is. And so, I for sure can resonate with that.
Yeah.
Although I have to be fully honest, my first thought was sitting on a diesel bus. I hate the smell of diesel. It makes me sick to my stomach. I hate sitting on a bus is something that so if you were to force me and just be like, my personal hell would be stuck on a bus with a bunch of people that I don't know, and it'd be a diesel bus. So that'd be a very surfacey answer. You took us real deep. So
Yeah.
but that was the first thing that came. I have to be honest. That was the first thought that came to my mind.
I keep thinking of those buses that you see in the movies that people take in South America or something on the ledge of the cliff.
Yes.
No. No,
you've
thank you.
got-
Yeah.
It's stuffed to the gills with people and a few
hot.
chickens and a few goats, and it's hot.
And the
with-
windows don't go down.
Exactly. That sounds like
No
hell
air
to me.
conditioning.
Yes, no air conditioning. And
All right. Well,
yeah, that
we
would
will
not
not
be.
send you on that
Yeah, thank
adventure.
you. Let's not do any bus travel.
No, that doesn't sound good. I'm such a princess. I'm like, I want my own private car, and
Yeah.
one day I'll get a charter jet, and we can all
Okay.
avoid the bus.
Fabulous.
travel.
Done.
Deal?
Done.
All right. Sounds good. All right, Jason, what's your question?
So I want to know, what is something that's either extremely unique or really unusual that you love?
About me?
Yeah, it could be about you, it could just be in life, but what's just something that you love that's out of the ordinary or unique or unusual?
It's not, to me, it's not unusual, but I love culture. I love embracing other people's culture, probably because I am very mixed. My parents are mixed. Their parents are mixed. So I come from a generation of mixed people, which makes me super mixed. And I feel bad for my youngest nephew, who is extremely mixed, and the most that he is of one ethnicity is 20%.
Wow.
Because both of his parents are mixed.
How amazing, though.
It is.
To have
It-
all of that.
It
flourish
is.
inside of
He
you.
did Ancestry, and it came out that he had Egyptian somewhere. So it's a whole thing. It's hilarious. But for me, growing up with so many different backgrounds and cultures, I got to try different food. I got to have the pleasure of going back to Hawaii to see my family, and that's a whole different. Although it's a part of the U.S., it's a whole different world over there. And I grew up as a hula dancer. And so I grew up always with long hair and always dancing. And just being able to embrace the different parts of me. And I met a really incredible woman here. Her name is Jeanette. And I'm Puerto Rican. She's Puerto Rican. And so I had a hard time identifying with being Puerto Rican, but also being Filipino, but also being Portuguese. And I was like, well, no one wants to fully claim me because I'm all of these things. And she said something that really resonated with me that I just hold dear to my heart. She's like, well, you have the ability to have the beauty of all of these cultures within you. Yeah. And I was like, that's really special. And so I think that's unique.
Yeah.
That I get to embrace all of these different sides. I can be my Puerto Rican self. I can be my Austrian self. I can be my Filipino self. And all of those are me. So yeah.
Love that.
Ree, what's something unusual or unique that you love?
You guys are going to think I'm so weird. Are you
That's
ready?
the point
Go
of
for
this
it.
question.
Yes, go for it.
Oh my gosh. So growing up, my family owned some property up in the mountains near Tarryall Reservoir, but it was like a community, but there was a private lake that the community could use. So I grew up fishing.
Me too.
Did you?
I did.
Really?
Yeah, I did.
See all the things. So my job, and I loved it. I insisted that it was my job when we would go fishing, is I was a family fish gutter. So someone
I
would
did not do that.
I loved it. So when someone would catch a fish, they knew my nickname growing up was Nani. So they knew, give Nani that fish or she'll slice you with that knife. So I wouldn't really, but it was kind of a joke with our family. So yeah, I was in charge of the family fish gutting. But my favorite thing was and I think this was the purpose, is when I would open up the fish, the first thing I would do is go to the stomach and I'd see what it was eating. And then I'd be able to tell everybody, okay, the fish has been eating flies or it's been eating this. And so go and fish with your worms or go and fish with this. And I would help my family catch more fish. And I felt,
Look at that.
yeah. So I felt more productive and useful. And I have too much ADHD to sit there and just fish. So it kept me entertained too.
I love that.
That's a new one. I'm learning something new about Uri. Do you like cutting fish open?
I promise you guys, I'm not a weird murderer. I don't know how to gut a human or any other animal. I could never do anything bigger than a fish, but yeah.
Wow. That's great.
Yeah, I told you it was weird.
Yeah, that's a good one. For me, I asked the question, and I was like, what's the weird or unusual thing that I love? And I would say something that's more unique about me is I really love deeper conversations. Most people don't always know how to hang with that, but it's I'm not always super good with the surfacey level type of just connecting. It's if we're going to talk, we're going to talk.
Yeah.
And we're going to go deep, and we're going to really go into the stuff and share about life and talk about the real things that are going on. So I feel like that's definitely something that's more unique that I love, is getting into the deeper waters with people. If it's surfacey, I don't really have much patience for it.
I don't either.
Yeah.
I think that's why you and I work together so well. You both know this. I hate networking. I am not the networking person. I can't stand it because I think it has a lot of surfacey stuff. And I'm just okay, I'm out. I want to go deep. I want to grow a friendship based on really cool exploration of each other, not just, hi, here's my business card.
Right, because you get a
Totally
whole
get
bunch
that.
of business cards, and how are you going to remember me if I'm going into those networking rooms?
Yeah.
Building relationships is how you do it, but you don't really get to do that when you go into a room of 400 people.
No, you don't.
Right.
You don't. Yeah.
And you've built your career on this idea of storytelling. So on some levels, this is kind of a nice dovetail to give us a little bit more of context of this is what you do. You tell stories, you figured out this way. So kind of dive in a little bit there. Let's kind of start to peel back some of the layers of starting with a little bit of your story and kind of what started you on your entrepreneurial journey.
Let's do it. So over a decade ago now, I created a nonprofit for domestic violence, and it was inspired by, you guessed it, my own story. I was affected by domestic violence and shared my restraining order on Facebook, let the world read it. It begun to create this global network of people across the globe who were writing in, sharing stories. I remember still working in corporate at the time, but I was so drawn to this work and so drawn to helping people find resources and helping them get out of these situations. I understood. I grew up witnessing domestic violence, but I also fell into that cycle as well. And so when I shared my story, I saw the power of vulnerability. I saw that when I shared my story, it inspired other people to share theirs. And so there were men and women and all different ethnicities, from India to Wichita, Kansas, to New York City, to the UK, to South Africa. People were writing in and saying, hey, can I share my story? And so I created this global platform where people felt safe and seen and heard to share these stories. Some of them were really graphic stories that the pain that these people went through, but they felt heard. As soon as I posted their story, people were writing in saying, oh my gosh, that's me too. And so in 2020, I just felt this calling to do more than just that. I remember hearing God's voice saying there's more to this story, but I just didn't know what. And so for the last few years, I've been on this journey of like, well, all right, well, put me where I'm supposed to go. And where am I supposed to go? And so I realized that there were stories in the making to lead me to creating BBN. Created Boss Babe Networking during the pandemic. I remember creating our first event. It was at Kawadi, and it was all things women empowerment. We did a networking event, and it was amazing. Did another event for International Women's Day, packed out Kawadi. And I kept doing that as my signature event. This year, we did Women of the World Fashion Show at the Olympic and Paralympic Training Center, where we got to showcase culture and women from all different backgrounds and ages. It was beautiful. So for me, creating BBN was about creating community and sharing stories. I created BBN in 2020, but was, just going through the motions as a business owner. I need to make money. I need to make sure my bills are paid. But I knew deep inside of me that there was something missing. I knew that the piece of intentionality, of meaningfulness, I just didn't want to create something that was just there. That's not me. I'm not surface level at all. I can't even answer questions without telling you a whole novel about it. And so when I created BBN, wrote the mission statement, we've had so many conversations about my other business that I created and end up putting it together with BBN, writing on the whiteboard, upstairs of, hey, what is this? I don't know. Let's figure this out. Let's talk about this. How about this? And just, I'm a creative. I throw in ideas. What sticks? What doesn't stick? And then really landed on this idea of, okay, at my deepest core, beyond anything else, I'm a storyteller. And I love telling people stories. And so BBN is a social impact driven business that focuses on sharing stories for women, impact driven businesses, and nonprofits. I feel like when we share stories, we build community, we can change the world. And that's exactly what I'm here to do.
That's so
Boom.
beautiful.
It is.
Wow. But along that journey, there's speed bumps, there's trips, there's falls, there's scrapes, there's bruises. Like, you're a really good storyteller. You made it sound very easy to go through all of this. But as we've built both of our businesses, well, I don't want to talk about all the black eyes, but, looking back, what is that one mistake that you made where you tripped and fell and you've got those scars to show it, but probably made you better for it?
You said one speed bump?
I know, right?
I have more than one speed bump, folks.
The biggest?
There was just so many along this road. I've been, for the most part, a entrepreneur for more than a decade. I think this year's like 14th year, maybe. God, I've learned so much. I have tripped, stumbled. That's taking it very lightly. I think I've rolled down hills. I think I fell at the bottom of the ocean. And I think that I couldn't even tell you one, honestly. I think it's, maybe one that comes to mind right now is not being my authentic self, trying to find this. When I transitioned out of my nonprofit in 2020, I thought I knew what I was doing. I leaned on my own understanding. Number one, that's, as an entrepreneur, don't lean on your own understanding. There are so many people that know much more than you do, who have been doing this, who have tripped, stumbled, fallen for the possibility to be like, hey, you should probably go this way. But I think that finding where I was supposed to be, at least right now for BBN, is being just open to be my most authentic self. When I created my nonprofit, there's another one too that just came up. Comparing myself to myself, to myself, folks, to myself. And that was difficult. Sorry, I just licked the microphone.
We always say eat the mic. So
yeah, my husband is great. Like when he does shows, he's like all up in there. But I think that was one of my biggest challenges along this journey, at least this phase of my career, is comparing Kristen in year 1, year 2 of my business to Kristen who raised $1 million. Why are we comparing to her? This is a completely different game. I mean, not even a game. I mean, I guess in my mind it was. But in being like bitter towards myself, of not giving myself grace, of like, hey, I'm doing something completely different, girl. And you're comparing yourself to something that you used to do over here that was a different flavor, maybe a different store of ice cream. You know what I mean? And I think maybe those two things, I can give you a whole list of things if we have time. But yeah, I think comparing myself is number one. And then not being my authentic self, to be like, hey, who are you at your deepest core? But I had to do the work to even get to that point. So
can you tell us a story of like where you feel like that comparison led to a mistake or led to some failure that then you were like, ooh, yeah, that was, and I had to kind of pivot this way? Like, do you have an example of kind of how that showed up?
Yeah, I mean, one, when you're comparing yourself to yourself, which I don't think we talk about enough. I honestly don't know if other people do that or not, but I realized that the frustration that was bottling inside of me, the disappointment that I had towards myself, the imposter syndrome, trying to tell myself that, oh, you don't know what you're doing and you don't know this and you don't know that. But then the other voice in my head saying, oh, but you did that. How come you didn't do it sooner? And you already know how to do it. So I'm putting myself down. And that shows up as how I treat other people. I'm upset internally, but I'm going to be upset at you because of whatever reason. Or just feeling like I don't have the confidence to show up, or not feeling like I deserve to be in rooms like this to share my story or to have conversations with the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce. I'm not worthy to talk to you or have any sort of business with you because I'm not worthy of that. And so I ultimately sabotaged myself, and that affected these last 5 years of transition, from going from my nonprofit to building what I'm building now. That was a 5-year hiccup.
Yeah.
Wow, that's sabotage. Did that transition into you not being your authentic self? Do you think there's a correlation there?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because looking back at it, the last 5 years, I always say that, when someone asks me a question, I always respond. It's just kind of a knee-jerk reaction. Oh my God, I can't answer that without telling you a story. Like, it's been in there.
Yeah.
But I don't know, maybe I ignored her. And maybe that's going back to the first question of like, oh, KP, I'm just ignoring her. Maybe I have a thing with, and I didn't think that I did that. Let me just put that behind, or that's not important. When in reality, I am KP.
Yeah.
And I am a storyteller. And so building this business, or even I remember another situation, I was driving from Fountain up to the studio, picking up something down there. And I was just having a conversation with God, like, what am I supposed to be doing? Because I am lost and I'm frustrated and I'm angry and I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. And I'm struggling financially, and this is for the birds. And I just remember clearly, I mean, my name is Kristen Faith, so I have a really big faith. Hearing God's voice saying, I didn't tell you to stop sharing your story, you did. And I was like, I'm even more disappointed. Wow. Now I'm more upset, because now I'm sabotaging myself. And the two things that I don't like the most is don't waste my time and don't waste my money. And I did both.
Right.
And so that pisses me off even more, is that I am my cause. It's kind of a default of like, I can blame you for my reasons of being upset. I can blame you for the reason I'm upset. But then when I have to look in the mirror and say, you're the reason why you're where you are.
Yeah. What did they say when you point the finger? You got
I got the whole damn hands right back at me. Yeah.
It's true. Yeah, absolutely.
And so, in that process, I'm curious, because I think you're not alone. A lot of people, a lot of myself and my own story have been through this in many ways. Did you notice a shift in your dreams of like what you were going for? So like if you kind of look back to the old self and say, oh, I was going after this thing, and now you're in this new version of yourself, and you're kind of like holding on to that old dream or that old expectation of self versus now awakening to like really what the dream is or really what it is that you want? Have you noticed kind of the comparison being held back to the old way of thinking, and yet you're in this new paradigm, and that's the comparison? I don't know. I'm curious what that's like for you.
I'm going to interpret that in the way that my brain is interpreting it. I couldn't tell you then what my my overall arching dream was. I just knew that I wanted it. This was like the thing that I would say is I want to make it cool to talk about domestic violence, and I'm going to do it in any way that I can. If that means getting porn stars to join my social media campaigns, I'm going to do it. And I did it. If that means being on national and international media outlets to talk about this issue, I'm going to do it. And I did it. Everything that I wanted to ever do with my nonprofit, I did it. And maybe that was the sign of like, hey girl, you did it, now next chapter. But the girl then who was still, which I didn't, identify with, of she was still broken, and I thought she was good. I thought she was great. She was at the height of her career. I realized that there was so much more growing to do, and that girl was stubborn, but I didn't know it. And God, if you would have told her that, she would have not believed you. But now, like, my ultimate dream is I want to be so wealthy that I can give so much money away to make an impact in the world. I don't care how I do it, legally, of course. But I feel like the work that I'm doing now to build BBN and to build this agency, when I created my nonprofit, I saw the vision and I saw where I needed to go. And I think that was another frustrating thing as a business owner, is that when I came into BBN, I didn't see the vision. So I was just kind of like, I'm going through the motions. And then slowly but surely, like, the pieces of the bigger picture started coming in. I don't have the full picture yet, but I just know that however I decide to build wealth, I 1000% want to be that person that could donate millions of dollars to help kids get the education they need, to donate here to provide kids a recording studio to find a safe space, or to donate here to organizations like Thrive that are doing incredible work for entrepreneurs. I want to be the vessel to be able to do that. That is my goal. And I'm sticking to that.
Yeah.
Do you think that there was a level, perhaps not settled, but a level of authenticity combining KP, the nonprofit, Kristen, in that aspect? We've talked a little bit about KP and who KP was: strong, defiant, take the world on her own terms, right? But then you talk about like the nonprofit time of your life, and strong, defiant, do this on our own terms. I mean, who in the world brings in porn stars to talk about domestic violence? Like, there's a level of boldness there that I think those two Kristen personas probably meshed and melted together.
I think it goes back to like the underdog, the person, and I think that absolutely relates to the core of who I am, is giving people a voice that other people say your voice doesn't matter here. I remember getting connected with Christy Mack. She's the adult film star, and her story came out publicly that she was, I'm not sure if y'all follow that story, remember that story. Sure. It was all over the news. She was the adult film star who was severely abused by an MMA fighter. Significantly abused, and her story was terrible. And in very Kristen fashion, I reached out like a normal person, and was like, hey, would you like to come share your story? Again, here's a story thing, right? Hey, want to come down to our conference that we're doing? She had lived in Vegas at the time, and would love for you to be our speaker. And she goes, oh my gosh, that would be amazing. Keep in mind, she had shared her story, and other people shared her story on every media outlet there was. And that was the first time that she shared her story publicly. And we had a standing room only room of college kids, community leaders, all the things. And she was like, hey, you gave me an opportunity to share my story when I never had before like this. And we kept working together and sharing stories. And so I think that going back to the whole overarching thing is I want to give people a voice that said your voice doesn't matter here. You don't get a seat at the table. And maybe that goes back to KP, the little girl who felt like her voice didn't matter. And then she created a nonprofit to tell the stories of victims of domestic violence and even families that lost loved ones to domestic violence. Where I have had family members reach out to me and tell me that people told them to stop sharing their story of their dead loved one because they have other kids. And I said, hell no, we're sharing your story because that story needs to be told. And I would fight for those stories to be told on major platforms. And I would fight to tell those stories because other people needed to hear them. And so going back to, the work that I do now, it's about sharing those stories of underserved people. It's sharing the stories of people who may have been told, who cares about Rihanna, who used to be that person? I don't want to hear her. I want to hear her because I know how much of an impact that the kids that I work with need to hear that story. And I've always been the connector of stories. Like, hey, your experience really resonates with this other person that I know. Y'all need to connect. And maybe that goes back to the connecting piece of BBN. I'm unraveling this live and direct here on our podcast.
So you guys don't need therapy. You just got to sit on grandma's couch here.
And storytelling is very much therapy because when you feel like, oh my God, I had this bottled up inside, but you care. And like that is like a gentle touch that I don't think everyone has. And I don't know, God gave me this gift to hear these stories and hold space for these stories and give them out to the world because that's what I want to do.
So I have a quick question. I'm curious to hear your experience here. So most people are hesitant to tell their story because of shame or fear of judgment, or there's all kinds of internal vernacular that's happening inside. You're telling yourself you're not worthy or, whatever it is. When you see all of these people's stories that you collect and you narrate and you help, bring out to the community, have you ever seen any of these people receive backlash or?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
In what way does that show up?
Oh my gosh. All right. So, even my own story, when I shared my story publicly, I remember there were women that reached out to me on social media saying, he would never do that. Like, am I making this up? Why would I make this stuff up? I'm sharing my restraining order on social media and you're telling me that this didn't happen to me.
Yeah.
Okay. There's another story. The literal example that I just used, her name is Tammy Willett, and her daughter Brandy was killed when she was 22 years old. And Tammy had reached out to me and said, I want to share her story. And I said, let's do it. So I shared her daughter's story publicly for the first time on our social media platform. And the killer's family was writing in the comments saying, he didn't kill her. Then how did this happen? How do you think this happened to Brandy? And so what I told Tammy and what I continue to tell her, this was over a decade ago, keep sharing her story because someone needs to hear it. And what I found is that I found personally so much healing, although the tragedy was absolutely horrific. I was 22 years old when I left that abusive relationship, and Brandy was 22 when she was killed. Wow. And God kept putting people and families in my path that were also 22, whether they were survivors or there were too many to count, families that had reached out to me that say, my daughter was 22, my daughter was 22, my daughter was 22. And I was like, what is happening? To the point where I got the number 22 with angel wings tattooed on my back, to remember those angels and to remember the girl who was so broken at 22 but had the courage to leave. There have been so many stories of people like, oh, well, she deserved it. Or so many people said, oh my God, yeah, I grew up with domestic violence and I got into an abusive relationship. And my parents told me, well, you shouldn't talk like that. Maybe you wouldn't have gotten treated like that. And so for me, when I hear those stories, it fires me up. Tell me that I can't tell someone's story. Tell me that person's story doesn't deserve to be heard. Tell me. I wish you would. And that fire led me to creating the biggest domestic violence nonprofit on the internet. We were ranked top 125 nonprofits on Facebook. I was raising over a $250,000 during the height of the pandemic when we couldn't have events. It wasn't grants. It wasn't Facebook ads. It was community that came together to build this nonprofit to help people get out of abusive relationships. And so I saw that power and being able to share stories like the Nunes partners and Leo's testimony of experiencing cancer and that being the vessel to say, hey, I've experienced this and I want to help you by giving you the right coverage that you need. That story that lives with all of us of why we do what we do, why we walk the way that we walk, why we talk the way that we talk, is all rooted in our story. And for people, if you don't know your story, you won't know why you act the way that you act. Or stories like Jonna Reeder Claymeyer, who is one of the most influential women in our city, but if you don't know her story, you don't know why she is the way that she is. But to me, it gives grace, it gives connection, it gives power to building that relationship. And that goes back to networking, that it's hard to, hey, I'm Kristen, this is my story, and I was a survivor, and this is blah, 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 and I'm giving you my card at a networking event, and I'll see you later. I'm not going to do that. You're not going to know who I am unless you sit down and have a conversation with me.
Exactly. Absolutely. So those people who tell their story and experience the adversity, what makes it worth it?
For Tammy in particular, it's that there are other people out there that need to hear it. I think that even for me, it was absolutely scary sharing my restraining order on Facebook. It's still on there. It's for me sharing my story, whether it was in a book or whether it was on a stage or whether it was in conversation. Every time that I shared my story since 2011, someone somewhere said, me too. And if I can help someone else feel like they're not alone, that makes it all worth it. And when I help people share their story and they start becoming a public speaker, the fear stops us from being our authentic self. Oh, what if they judge me? What if they shame me? What if they don't like me anymore? It really goes back down to the little child in us of like, I'm not going to be accepted by you because you're going to know who I am. But I mean, even how I met my husband, we were in the recording studio and I showed my story to him and he read it and this is, keep in mind, I met him the day before that. And he was like, this is your story. And I'm like, yep. And I shared it out of, if you want to love me, know me, be my friend, I need you to know who I am. And that was a giant vulnerable moment. And that led me to my husband. And he had looked at my story, read it, and texted himself while he had my phone in his hand and said, this is your future wifey. And here we are. It'll be 13 years this year. Yeah.
He really said, this is your future wifey?
Yeah, he texted himself. And I was like, dude, I just met you. Like, literally, I just met you the day before. And you text yourself. It has to be somewhere in the archives of, like, as a screenshot of that. But he texted himself. It was like, this is your future wife. And here we are.
When you know, you know.
When you know, you know. Right.
So I'm curious in, taking your own personal story and taking your own personal experiences, how has that then led you as a business leader? Right now, as you've started nonprofits and now that you've started the business, like how did that stuff translate to now how you exist as a business leader, as an entrepreneur?
I think once I started embracing that I had like a gift for sharing stories, I was like, I can do this. Oh, wait, I have been doing this. My imposter syndrome over these last few years told me that I wasn't good enough to be a content creator when I've been doing it professionally. But I had the title and I had the role and I had the followers and I had the platform. And then starting from scratch, it's like, well, who's going to want to do this with me? Telling myself that I wasn't good enough. When I was the person that had the gifts, not the entity. I built the entity. So I think now when I work with businesses and nonprofits and women, I think what draws people to the work that I do goes back to being authentic. I feel like when you know my heart, you know that I have your best interest. Also, when you build trust with the people that you serve, why would they want to work with anyone else? Because you have that, again, relationship with someone. Everyone that I work with, for the most part, it took time to cultivate that relationship, and it's an ongoing business relationship. I don't want to just one and done, here we go. That's not who I am. I want to be able to walk this journey with you, share your story, and tell the world about you, because I'm not going to accept a client who I don't believe in, to be able to share the story in the right way. And so I think that would be the answer, or the opportunities that I get to work to do. I recently worked with the Crime Stoppers of Houston. They saw my content and they said, "Hey, do you want to make content for us?" And I'm like, "Absolutely,
Yeah.
Crime Stoppers, that's cool."
Yeah.
And so getting out of that negative mindset of, "Oh, you're not good enough, you can't do this." Crime Stoppers called me and wanted to make content. I've done content with companies like Sephora, Target, a whole bunch of major brands. And just I have to be like accepting of the things that I've done, and not kind of be in awe of the things that I've done to the point of sabotaging myself. Yeah.
Yeah. So on this road to authenticity, where are you now?
I'm good today. I think it's a constant journey, honestly. Like sometimes I wake up and like, oh, I don't feel great. I mean, I told you the last few weeks I've been off. I've been like mentally off, and I hosted a really big show and it was amazing. Loved it. 1000% fantastic. But I was just emotionally exhausted after that. And for someone who thrives on being productive and making sure that I'm not wasting my time, my own time, I had to see it as an opportunity to rest, and not as, "Oh, you're a failure. Oh, here comes the failure voice." But accepting that there are good days and there are bad days. I am not perfect by any means, way, shape, or form. But, listening to my body and being, authentic, and hey, you need rest, or hey, you need this. My body's been telling me that I need vacation. So need to do that.
Let's go, girl. I'm with you.
I'm serious.
Yeah.
I need to go
Girls
on. I need to go on vacation right now. But yeah, I think just listening to that voice and being kind to that voice. I'm still learning. I couldn't tell you that I'm like right where I need to be. I'm still learning how to be all versions of me.
Yeah.
And KP is one of those versions that I need. Someone told me that I need to write a letter to myself, and I almost cried. I'm like, which is crazy. I tell people to do this for themselves. You should do that, and then you burn it. I've done that, and I've done that, and I'm not joking about like, oh, I don't walk the talk and all the things, but I haven't thought of that, and I don't know why. Probably because, again, put her in a box, buried her.
Yeah.
But that'll be my next thing, and we'll talk about that next time we do lunch.
Let's do that.
Yeah. Maybe we can do it together, and we'll cry, and then we'll burn it on the rooftop. Yeah.
Not on the rooftop. I might get in trouble for burning down the building.
No, don't do it. Yeah, we won't do it. We're not going to burn it on the roof.
We'll find a special place though.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. What advice would you give to an individual who this conversation's resonating with, as far as on the journey of authenticity? What would you tell them to explore or discover about themselves, and perhaps embrace in order to be their authentic selves?
Well, that question actually reminded me of what you said, Jason, about I don't like having surface level conversations. And it's really hard to tell someone, find your authentic self, if you are not willing to do the work, to do the layers. Because I can only get so far to somebody if you're not willing to peel back the layers of who you truly are. It reminds me of the Moana song, Know You Who You Are.
Oh,
100%.
I love that movie. I cry every single time. But I think it goes back down to that. Like, you have to be willing to do the work. You can't reach the quote unquote proverbial finish line if you are not willing to peel back the layers of who you truly are. And I can't tell you who you are, because I don't know who you are unless you tell me who you are. But if you don't even know who you are, that's a first starting point. And for me, that was a lot of therapy. That was a lot of talking out loud. That was a lot of resolving the feelings and emotions that I had from my childhood trauma, having conversations with my parents about it. That was hard. Embracing the, I haven't done that KP thing yet. But just doing the work and, with that, because people see this version of me and they don't get to see they didn't get to see the broken girl. They didn't even get to see the broken girl who was so deep in depression in 2018, moving here, not knowing anyone. My grandma died. The person who abused me abused someone else. I was asked to go back to San Diego to testify. My nonprofit was going through some stuff and my life was a shit show. In 2018, my husband was doing incredible things. I was empty. I couldn't support my husband, who was then my boyfriend. Moved out here, never lived with anyone outside of the state before. So my life completely was upside down. But I had to do the work to get through that. I had to do the work to process all those things, still processing those things. But they see this. They see the success, the glitz, the glam, the things, and all the fun stuff. But she fought to get here. And people don't get to see that. And so for me, anyone watching who's like, well, I want to get to where you are. Number one, this is not a comparison. There is no comparison to me, to you, to anyone here in this room. And people often do that. And they tell me that, like, oh my God, but you're so much better than me. Number one, do not compare yourself to me. Please don't. This is a never ending road of disappointment. Number two is find out who you are. If you feel like there is something inside of you from your childhood that you need to work on, people don't like talking about that, talking about childhood trauma. I love talking about it. I can't be your therapist. I am not a therapist. I just happen to have the skills of therapists, but I'm not a therapist.
Do you know how much I say that in my career?
I'm not a therapist. But I had to learn who I was to unravel. Well, why did I even get into an abusive relationship? Why did I do all those things? And I had to do the work to unravel those things myself. And then making sure that those things didn't show up in my marriage. And really just doing a lot of unraveling and willing to do the work. Yeah. And so if you're watching and you're like, hey, I'm missing something in my life, which ultimately, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a boss babe and you're feeling like something's missing in your life, there's a high probability that you need to work on something. And so for me, being able to work with clients and unravel those things and share stories that they might think, this is not important. It's important. Your story is important. So.
It is. I think that at the core, I think you nailed it, is getting comfortable with all the parts of yourself that you're not comfortable with. It doesn't necessarily even have to mean acceptance of it, but just accepting that it's there and that it's a part of you, acknowledging it, because I think all of us have a tendency just to put that part of us into a box and then set it in the furthest, darkest corner and just leave it there.
And with that, people think that, going back to the work that I used to do, people think that if they don't acknowledge it, it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that's not true at all. You're going to wonder why your relationships are bad, your marriage is bad, how you parent your kids are bad, how you respond to life is bad. If you wonder why all of these things aren't where you want it to be, it's probably because you have something inside of you that's ready to burst at the seams and you don't know how to handle it. You just got to put tools in your toolbox to learn how to handle it.
Well, and I feel like often a story that a lot of entrepreneurs have is that they get into the business to avoid and escape that story. Yes. Yeah. And right. So they think, this will be my path out, or I'm not going to have to deal with it. I'm just going to go make a shit ton of money. I'm going to, like, all these other things that kind of ends up either bypassing or escaping or creating escapism from the thing that's still who you are. And that will inevitably show up in your business. Yep. Always.
1,000%.
As a leader, it shows up in the relationships with your staff. And so sometimes the hard reality is the reason your business is failing is you. Yep. And until you go deal with that, you're going to keep seeing this. You could be super successful and all the right business metrics, but the reality is for yourself, you're dying. You hate it.
100%. I can relate to that. 100%. If you don't do the work, it will absolutely show up. And I saw that in this new chapter of my life. When I transitioned out of my nonprofit, I thought I was at the height of my career. And I thought, I got it. Why do I need to do anything else? And I was bitter that I had to start over. And I remember my husband telling me, you're telling yourself that you can't build again and you don't want to build again. And if there was a visual representation of how I felt when he said that, it was a little girl pouting in the corner. No, I don't want to do it because I built that and I saw how much work it took to build that. Instead of embracing that was a chapter, it was great, wonderful, here we go, all the things. And then I realized that I still had more work to do because the girl who created that nonprofit was broken as
fuck.
Yes. And I was working 20 hours a day, 7 days a week, hungry for acceptance, hungry for making an impact, hungry to run away from the pain, not realizing I was running away from my own pain. And so when I transitioned out of the nonprofit, the rose-colored glasses came off and I was like, holy shit, I still got work to do. I wrapped my identity in that nonprofit so much. I got a tattoo, and thousands of people around the world got the same tattoo also. It symbolizes a lot more than like I branded myself. But it says, I found peace in breaking the silence. And this was really meaningful for me. It's when I transitioned out of the nonprofit, I was so bitter that I wanted to cover it up and I'm going to erase it. And that goes back to trying to erase the things that make me uncomfortable when I've been doing the work to be uncomfortable and I'm okay with being uncomfortable. It's not fun.
Yeah.
But what I realized in this new chapter, in order for me to become the person that I was designed to be, I had to continue peeling back the layers. And I thought I did. And so there'll be times in your journey as an entrepreneur that you're like, oh, something comes up and I gotta do the work. I'm a visual person too, that, for example, like if you see the trauma, for a lot of people who didn't do the work, they'll hold on to the trauma. Like, this is me. And like, you can't rip it out of my hands.
Yep.
And I understand because I was there. But where I learned to get to is, this is my trauma. That's my trauma, and that this is what it was. Great. And I'm not attached to it. It's a part of who I am. But I had to.
It's your plate.
It's my plate. It's my plate.
Yeah.
But instead of like, my plate doesn't exist, I don't have a plate. You're like, I see the plate though.
Yeah.
No, you don't.
Yeah, but on that plate, it's not just that spoon you picked up, right?
It's the other
also
things.
the jar of milk, and it's also the coffee, and it's all these different parts and pieces. But why do we always hold on to that damn spoon? Stupid spoon.
And I think it really speaks to like how so often in this idea of storytelling, and it's definitely a theme that's in the ethers right now around the value of telling story and the value of brand and the value of building your business based off the ability to storytell. But if you are confused about the identity, you're going to be confused about the story that you're telling. And I think that's such a linchpin for so many entrepreneurs that get stuck because they're like, oh yeah, I know I should be telling a story, but I don't know what story to tell. So
I love that. I love that a lot.
Yeah. So they tell someone else's story because it's the should. This is the story I should be telling. And tapping into that true, real identity and telling that story, that's infinitely more challenging because of the work that it requires, the amount of vulnerability, letting go of the shame, these themes that we've been talking about. But the secret sauce is that when you can tell that story, that's when it lands. And that's going to be the thing that community, network, all of this stuff as human beings we're looking for. Because at the end of the day, we can kind of all smell it when it's a false story, right?
Oh,
We can smell the bullshit.
Yeah.
You can.
And we all kind of know it. You see it in the business networking world, and you can kind of see that. But then you look in the mirror and you're like, well, shit, I'm doing it too. So we're just not going to pay attention to it, right? And just keep going forward.
Yeah.
But then people pop up and they're like, oh, that feels real. That person feels different. What's going on there? And at the end of the day, the theme I see consistent is that person is comfortable with who they are. It always comes down to that. They're happy with their identity. They're happy with who they are.
And they found out who that person was. And it's okay to not know who you are, but be willing and hungry to find out who that person is.
Oh, yeah.
I think that there is a big difference between the person who, I don't know who I am and this is what it is. First of all, don't get stuck there. Number two, if you are, for me, I'll be vulnerable. I don't know if I've fully arrived yet. I know that. who is Kristen Faith? I remember watching a video from, I think it would have been 2020, 1 Million Cups. And the version of Kristen that was talking was very different than this version of Kristen. That version of Kristen was sad. And that's okay. But embracing that she was sad, but that pain propelled me into my purpose. And that has continually done that over the course of my entire life. Just be hungry to know who you are. I feel like so many times we find ourselves in relationships where you're so hungry to know who this person is or that person is. But are you hungry to know who this person is? I don't want to. Well, if you don't want to know who this person is, they don't want to know who that person is either. Point blank. If you're wondering why your relationship's not working, it starts with you. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Amen. Drop the mic right there. Wow. I think, that pretty much sums it up. I'd be hungry to know who you are. Do the work, peel back those layers. And that's the thing. I remember, I think it was my grandma or my aunt when I was little. We were talking about peeling back the layers, and they always said, it stinks and it's going to make you cry. But that's okay, because eventually when you get into the frying pan, it's going to smell so sweet and taste so delicious. And it does. And it's gorgeous in that respect. So thank you. Thank you for today and this incredibly beautiful, deep, reflective conversation. This is gorgeous. But do me a favor. Tell everybody out there watching how they can get a hold of you, how they can do business with you. And,
all the
share your
things.
light.
Yes. So to get connected with my business, all platforms meaning Facebook and Instagram, official Boss Babe Networking, or just type in Boss Babe Networking. If you want to connect with me on a personal level, I am Kristen Faith. And that's who I am, is Kristen Faith. And embracing all those flaws. Anyways, I am Kristen Faith on Facebook and Instagram. My website is bossbabenetworking.com. And if you're watching and you're like, hey, I would love for you to share my story, let's do it. Let's do it. There's so many stories that we need to tell, and I'm on a mission to tell them.
Love it.
The end.
The end.
Perfect.
Well, thank you for joining us today for today's episode. Show me yours. Tune in next time when actually you didn't even know it, but you seated our next guests, Brandy and Leo Nunes. So,
Amazing. Love that.
Huh?
That wasn't planned.
Our blue-haired buddies.
Yes, love them.
They're the best. So thank you, and we will see you next time on our next episode.